Arif, and I am the director of the University of New Mexico Art Museum. I'd like to welcome all of you here in Keller Hall, as well as all the folks joining us on the live stream. So glad you could all come out, and what a great turnout on this Saturday afternoon. We are here for the national premiere of Transformations, which is organized by the Dana Burgess Dance Company and the UNM Art Museum. This presentation of Transformations is made possible by a grant from the Terra Foundation for American Art, and with additional support from the DC Commission on the Arts and the Humanities, the Nearing Stiftung Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Our local support includes a gift by College of Fine Arts donors Robert and Jenna Ford, thank you very much, and sponsorship by Media Desk, the New Mexico Humanities Council, the UNM's College of Fine Arts, and UNM Press. It takes a village to put these performances on. So thank you so much, everyone, for your support. I would also like to thank Rebecca Smith and Liz Racone here at Keller Hall for working with us. This is a busy time of the year at the end of the semester. There are student recitals after this, so they are still working into the evening. Really appreciate all your help and willingness to help us host this event, as well as Richard Hess from the Theater and Dance Department, who helped with getting this dance floor here at Keller Hall. I'd also, of course, like to thank all of the staff at the UNM Art Museum, and specifically our museum student staff, who I'm sure you've met as you were coming in. We rely on our students and their wonderful help for us in the museum. Of our staff, I want to specifically acknowledge Devin Geraci, our Manager of Communications and Audience Engagement. This event would not have been possible without all of her hard work and her whole organizational skills. So a round of applause for everyone who helped make this possible. So I know I can be cognizant of the time, so keep the introductions brief, but in the program you have, you can learn about all the amazing artists who will be performing here today and their careers and education, etc. But to start off briefly, now in its 30th season, the Dana Burgess Dance Company is the preeminent modern dance company of Washington, D.C. Its repertoire focuses on identity in the context of historical events and personal stories, thereby connecting a shared human experience and showcasing cultural confluence. Dana is the founding artistic director of the company, and since 2016, he has served as the first ever Smithsonian choreographer in residence. Based at the National Portrait Gallery, his company creates new works inspired by cutting-edge exhibitions, hosts open rehearsals, and provides an opportunity for audiences to experience dance, as well as understand and witness its creative process. Dana also happens to be an alum of the University of New Mexico Theater Dance Department, and so happy to have him back here on campus. Also to my left is Patricia Michaels of Taos Pueblo. She is a world-renowned fashion and textile designer. She has studied at the Institute of American Indian Arts at Santa Fe, the Chicago Art Institute, where she studied with artist Nick Cave, who coincidentally did a talk in this very hall, and a residency at Hammond Institute in 2015. Patricia has worked at the Santa Fe Opera and designed costumes for Opera Lafayette, who performed at the Kennedy Center. You might have heard of that one. Patricia also was selected by the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, who awarded her the first inaugural Arts and Design Award. There's many more impressive things that both of these individuals have done. Please check out your program for those. All right, getting to our conversation, and I guess maybe somebody wondering, why is this happening here today? I had the pleasure of meeting Dana in November, this past November, for a theater and dance event on the Santa Fe, and told me about this piece he was working on that was inspired by the Transcendental Painters Group. Many of you may know this was a group of artists, an artist collective that was formed in Santa Fe and Taos in 1938. And many of the founding members have close ties to the UNM Art Museum and the university. Our museum has significant holdings of their work as well as their archival materials in our own collection. So of course I was really interested to hear what Dana was working on, and I'm really glad that this performance happened so quickly. I think we were saying oh, maybe the next year or two we'll do this, but we decided to do it much sooner than that. So to get started, maybe I thought briefly I mentioned you were an alum, and just curious if you want to talk just briefly about how being a student here at UNM has launched you in your career, and I don't know if that helped inspire you maybe to work with museums of the visual arts with your dance as well.
Absolutely. I actually came to the University of New Mexico thinking that I was going to be an accounting major. But my parents are both visual artists. I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I grew up in the midst of the creative process, which was great. But I just kept thinking, oh, when I go to the university, I have to actually study something different. So I went to accounting classes and realized just how horrible it was at them. And so I started to just wander during class time, and I wandered into the dance building here at the University of New Mexico. And I was sort of drawn, like there's this Pied Piper right there, to the music and to the movement. And I literally just sort of snuck into some classes and was just completely enamored by the teachers there, such as Jennifer Pradell and Judy Benham. And one day, one of my teachers said, "Oh, you're doing really well in this class, but if you don't sign up for this class, you can't take this class anymore." So I became a dance major, and it really changed my life. It completely transformed my understanding of art, because I had always been around visual artists who were my parents and their sort of cadre of friends. But when I realized that the body could actually be an artistic form, that a kinesthetic sensibility and a choreographic sensibility could be art and it could be a career, that's what really, I think, set me on a path for the rest of my life.
It's great to hear. So I mentioned you being Smithsonian choreography residents, and that you have done and are still working on pieces that are designed to be performed in art museums and galleries. How did that process come about?
Sure. In 2013, the Smithsonian launched a new exhibition entitled Dancing the Dream, and it was the history of American dance, both modern dance, ballet, tap, Broadway, show dance, etc. And I received a phone call from a historian named Amy Henderson, and she said, we are going to include an image of you in this exhibit. Would you like to come down and talk to me about how you might envision dance going along with an exhibition about dance, because there was a visual component but not the actual physical component yet. So I met with Amy and we spoke about creating one of the exhibition halls with a dance floor so that I could be in there with the company, develop work so the public could come in week after week and see how a dance is developed, and then ultimately perform the dance during the run of the exhibition. So I did a couple of new premieres there. And at the end of that, the director of the museum, Kim Sayet, came up to me and said, maybe we can make this into a special position for you. So it took about 2 years to move through the institution, all the way to the top of the institution, back down again to create the position. And it was created, and I started to choreograph 2 or more works per year based on the exhibitions at the National Portrait Gallery. And prior to that, I had worked with a lot of visual artists that had worked in different museums and knew that I just loved that, to get out of the normal dance studio, which is sort of just a box with a wall of mirrors. So it gives this opportunity to understand the world in a more three-dimensional way. So that's really how it came about.
And this specific piece we're seeing tonight, Transformations, with the Transcendental Painters Group, was that something you wanted to do, or were you approached by an institution to do that?
It's such a serendipitous story, because I was approached originally by LA County Museum of Art to consider an exhibition that they had on the Transcendental painting group from 1938 to 1942, specifically those works. And so we were talking about that, etc. And I really just fell in love with the idea. And then the plans for that shifted in terms of dates and timing and programming. And I had just been here in New Mexico, and it's like, oh my gosh, this piece should premiere here. I wonder if we can collaborate on that. And so this will be the premiere, which we're really excited about being here in New Mexico, because I think that ultimately that's where this piece should premiere, since it is so New Mexico at its heart. And then from here on the 14th of the month, it'll be at the National Portrait Gallery, and on November 30th, it'll be at the Penny Center.
Great. Thanks. So, Patricia, actually, we have 3 folks who are raised here in New Mexico. I think that's rare for the arts here. It's great. But you also grew up. You and Dana grew up together. Went to high school, etc. How? Maybe talk about. Did they approach you for this specifically, or how did this get going?
So yes, Dana and I survived Santa Fe High School. We're odd, but I think being odd, we bonded our friendship together, and it led us to be really strong in the world of arts, because, as you know, in order to survive in the arts, you have to have the courage and the wisdom to really pursue your vision. I didn't dress typical in high school, and that's what attracted him to me, because he said, oh, your art's dressed so interesting, so beautiful. And so I was like, yeah. And so I saw him, it was in the fall, right? Was it when you did the performance here?
Yeah.
And I was in tears. The performance that he choreographed was just absolutely beautiful. And I was sitting there crying afterward, because it's, made me happy and joyous. And the way he expresses the movement and the body, just marries so beautifully into how I picture being ethereal and when I do my designs. And so his play of light and movement was just gorgeous. And afterwards, he approached me and I want to talk to you about something to see if you're interested in doing another collaboration with me, because we had done one prior at Santa Fe at the Barn House for the children.
National Dance Institute.
Yes, and that was for the story of La Llorona. And so I made these like soggy, sad flowers. So those are the costumes for La Llorona. Obviously not, right? So he called me and he said, it's going to be the Transcendental period. And I said, well, that's perfect. I'm familiar. I sold some of those paintings in the gallery that my ex and I had in house before. Lived with him now, Bishop paintings, and seen homes with collections of these paintings. Very familiar with what the play of light is, and it's almost like nonsensical sometimes, so it makes it fun. And that's kind of how we were in high school anyway. So I ran with it, and my daughter, Margot, Beta, she just finished getting her degree in digital design communications. And she was like, Mom, I'm just like so bored. I don't know, I just graduated, but like I can't do anything. And I said, okay, do this project with me. She said, what's it about? And I'm like, it's the Transcendental period paintings. I don't know anything about this. Yes, you do. We grew up with these paintings in the house. So I'll send you some images. She was, oh, okay, I got this. What, it was like 3 days later? And she had these beautiful textiles for us to choose from. I mean, she's just spot on. This wonderful sense of energy. And then suddenly goes, can we do some more white in there? She just kept pouring out all this beautiful imagery. And then we started to do the silhouettes. And then, we start to do fabrics. And then we redo the fabrics. And we choose sequences. And we're so in sequence yesterday. The last minute. That's just the manuals. And so I think with all of this, growing up was a family of dancers, from Taos Pueblo, and everybody was a competitive dancer, I knew that I didn't want to be a competitive dancer because another trophy, another award for dancing, to me was defeating any kind of accomplishment in my family. So I used to imagine what a beautiful dance outfit would look like, or what a beautiful garment would look like. So when the competition was going, the song was over, and I'm still dancing, and my family didn't understand, like, what is the matter with you? But I was trying to capture light and movement with the garment when I was a child, and that's why I took fashion.
So, Dana, did you have a knowledge of the painters group growing up here, or was this project kind of your first interaction with that?
Was familiar with the group, but actually researching the work happened because of this project. You know, it's like growing up in Santa Fe in a painting family. You know, I was familiar with that time period, but I didn't really understand just how profoundly early within the history of abstraction these works and these artists took place. Right? Which is amazing that we're just a few years, out into manifestos by Kandinsky, and all of a sudden these works appear. I mean, it's just so incredible.
Here, I guess maybe talk about the relationship between, say, your position as a choreographer and organizer, and working with a designer like Patricia. Is there a lot of back and forth, or I mean, you guys have obviously known each other for a long time, but maybe how's that relationship go?
Gosh, there is a lot of discussion, and what's so amazing now with technology is that we can text, we can email, we can talk on the phone, we can see each other in person. There's just all these different layers of ways that we can communicate, and also really different stages in that process, right, that we were talking about.
Yeah, and I think what's important is when you're designing for a client, you have to listen to what, of course, the theme is, their needs, and then be able to change very quickly, because at the end of the day, you're helping them foresee their vision. So I even went back to the drawing board just about half an hour ago. A couple newborn looks, and sometimes after hearing the dancers, then I'm, it's hard to stop sometimes as an artist. You're only forced to stop when it's over, and so it's not really over yet for me. It's still 2 more performances.
That's interesting. So, you came from a family of dancers, so you're familiar with that movement. Does that influence what the designs are or the fabrics, knowing that these are going to be danced and performed?
Absolutely. I first give the option of what the textile is going to be, what the fiber is going to be to Dana, because he's the one who's commissioning. So there's, we thought about doing some silks and stuff so it would be layered, but then he just said, no, I want the longevity for these to be something and then be more sportive. So you'll see it's more of a sporty look, and but it just depends. I just have to listen to the client. That's the main objective. But anytime I am designing, my influences have been nature, ceremonies, the playground, going down the sliding, never wind. Think lights, turning. When we were dancing, ceremonies or at powwows, we're turning, and you feel that lightness. It brings a sense of strength and also protection. Like you're having that full circle. And I think in this day and age, it's almost like the Transcendental period brings that same kind of feeling. I felt like thematically it was so spot on to what I think of when I'm designing. It's that emotional state or commitment to something spiritual, or something that doesn't have to have any solid purpose. Just like when I design for Native American attire, sometimes, like this right here, this is water, but it doesn't, like scream water. It's just a reflection of water and light in the water. So like when you dive into the water and you see all that beautiful light, that's what it is. So I think that this period has been a fun piece to work with.
Yeah. I think that we're also in a period of coming out of a great quieting, right? Where we're all sort of in a new state of questioning what our life is about, what's important in life. And the Transcendental painting group, I think, had this question of duality between materialism and spirituality that was going on. And so it just felt really apropos somehow to take that on in today's environment.
Yesterday dinner, we had the pleasure of having the dancers perform in front of some of the pieces in our collection. And for the audience maybe wondering why this is not in the museum, our galleries are not big enough to accommodate the performance as well as an audience of this size, so that's why we're here. But you got a chance to get up close and personal with some of those pieces. Did that, any kind of light bulbs go off for you, or any specific? And then these are paintings by Raymond Judson, who was a founding kind of faculty member here on campus.
I think what was so exciting about seeing the juxtaposition of the dancer in such a close proximity to the painting, was that I could see the relationship of a sort of a sacred geometry that's placed within the way he was painting and designing the lines within the canvas, like the different shapes, and to see that relationship to the human body, because in Eastern cultures and the painting group was very interested in Eastern cultures and philosophies, also in yogic art, in Hindu art, in Tankas, Buddhist paintings. There is a sacred geometry to the body, and I can see how that actually is utilized within this time period of abstract art as well.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it made me think actually, just now when you mentioned that when you were doing this choreography, obviously you have the artworks in mind, but when you're designing the movements without the art there, is that, do you like have projections, or do the dancers do some study on what the artworks are?
And that's a great question. It's sort of all of the above, because within the dance studio we do have a large projection screen, so we're able to project different works that we're finding inspiring at the moment. We can experiment with different musical scores to see which ones align. And we always put together for the dancers these big Google folders, which they can check in on, and they can listen to different scores from that time period. They can read about the history of different painters. They can look at different examples of the paintings themselves, so they can do that on their own as well. So we have these sort of virtual folders that each dancer can check into now as well.
Let's see. Yeah. And sure we time. Yeah, I think we have time for one more. I wanted to just touch briefly on, you mentioned the score, right? So we're fortunate today that the score is by Dane Rudger, who was a member of the Transcendental Theaters group. We have in our collection video of his other scores. It was really great to actually hear what the music sounded like. And I guess, Dana, was that part of, did you have multiple things to choose from, or what kind of resonated with this specific piece?
I did. I was looking for different works that were specifically associated with the painting group. And of course, Dane traveled with a group to New Mexico. And he's an interesting individual because he was a philosopher and composer, and then became this amazing astrologer as well. And so he had this whole different this long trajectory of looking at the way music engaged with the visual arts, but also kind of the cosmos ultimately. And So we often work with this wonderful pianist, Dana Scott, who you'll hear today to the fluid with us. And she took the score that I was interested in and will be performing it. But what's interesting about this score is that there are these moments of time interpretation by the pianist. And so the tempos can vary, the silence can vary, there's a whole improvisational component that can occur. So it's fascinating in that way also.
Well, I think about time we'll clear out of here and get ready for the performance. So we're going to clear the table, and then the performance will begin shortly after. Thanks, everyone.